Hello, everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Mo Show Live. Today's guest and today's topic is one that I think a lot of us are facing at one point in time in our life, and that is we're all hopefully living longer and having healthier lives. But at some point, many of us are faced with a loved one, a parent, grandparent, or somebody else in the community that they are trusted with caring for that may not be in a situation that it's safe or best in their best interest to live at home anymore. And they're faced with looking at what are their alternatives and what are the options for something like an assisted living or a nursing home facility. And when we're faced with that, it's often something that many of us have never dealt with before. And we don't know what to look for. We don't know what to ask. We don't know what the red flags are. We're worried about cost. There are a lot of moving points that are out there. And we're hoping today in today's podcast to touch on some of those things so you can be better informed and be proactive and not reactive when you're making these important decisions for your family members. So, today, I'm excited to have as our guest Leigh Ann Hamby. Leigh Ann is the executive director of, I should have asked before we went live to remember to have pronounced your facility, Leigh Ann, again, Kauhale, Byrd Springs,
Kauhale.
Kauhale, Byrd Springs. I'm sorry. She's the
That's all right.
executive director of Kauhale, Byrd Springs, an assisted living facility here in the Huntsville, Alabama area. Leigh Ann has over 20 plus years of experience working in these facilities as a director and other capacities. So she is perfect guest to have on, be talking about these issues. So if you've got questions or want feedback, please put something in the comments. If you're watching the show on recording and you got questions or comments, we'll monitor the comments and sections in all the platforms and try to get you some information or links to valuable resources if something we can help you with. But share this out because this is something that a lot of folks are dealing with, and we want to make sure we can kind of open the book on this and provide some valuable resources so you're making an informed decision when you're looking to help place your loved one in an assisted living facility. So, Leigh Ann, how are you doing today?
Doing good. Thank you. Thank you for that introduction.
Well, thank you for taking time today. I know you've got a busy schedule with everybody and your residents at your facility, and you guys were kind enough to show me around there a while back. And when we were talking about this topic, I just thought it was one that would just really strike a chord with a lot of folks. Um, can you kind of, I'd say, just maybe start with a basic question that I had that some people may have as well, which is, give us the difference between an assisted living type facility, what uh, resources are there, what type of people with different types of issues may be more qualified or better suited for assisted living versus, say, a nursing home.
Okay. The biggest difference between assisted living and a skilled environment is that we're a home-like environment, where a skilled environment is more of a hospital type environment. So, of course, we're under the Alabama regulations, but in assisted living, we're able to do all care with activities of daily living. That's dressing, bathing, incontinent care, helping with their medication administration, helping with if they need assistance with their transfers. All of that is in our area of what we can do. With when people ask me what it can assisted living do that or could not do that would cause someone to have to go to a skilled environment, that's when you have to have intravenous medications be fed intravenously, are completely bed bound. Those are the things that an assisted living cannot do. But now we can do things that we can bring in PT, OT, speech therapy. We can bring in hospice and we can end well at home. So there's a broad thing that people don't understand that assisted living can offer. Now, each community can offer different ADL care, but it's just based on what the state allows us to do. And we can do a lot of those things and help them in assisted living, uh, as long as that resident can direct their care. So I need to go to the restroom. I want to go to the cafeteria. I want to go eat. Those things are things that we can do, even though they may not be able to ambulate from their room, their apartment to the other parts of the community. The dining room, of course, is the biggest thing, is getting them to the dining room. As long as they can say, "Hey, Leigh Ann, I want to go," we take them. So they don't have to ambulate 5 miles, just be able to help us. Stand and pivot is our biggest thing. But they do not have to walk long distances, pedal long distances, those type of things. The biggest thing that causes a change in where you go from an assisted living into a memory care environment is if mom or dad can no longer recognize their medications. Um, I need to be able to say that purple pill looks off to me. So what is that? And it can be explained by my nurses or my med tech that, hey, different manufacturers may have different colors in their
Mhm.
prescriptions. So, do you take this omeprazole? Yes, that is something I take for my acid reflux. So, but unfortunately today, because we have a different manufacturer, it is purple, where yesterday it may have been blue. So, but to be able to do that. Once my residents are unable to do that, that's where it goes into a memory care community. But still under that memory care community is licenses in assisted living. It's called a specialty care assisted living. Um, can still do those same types of care with them. When we have to move to that skilled environment is when we can no longer do the things that are required. That is being I can't do someone that is at bedbound unless they're at end of life with hospice. If they have those intravenous types of medications or feedings, I can't do those. Um, and we can even do catheters as long as that resident can direct that care out at her. Hey, we need to change the bag. Those type of things. Colostomy bags are in the same way. As long as they can direct that care, we can manage those.
Well, that's great to know because I think there's, at least from my perspective, there's some confusion on, or could easily be confused on what resident of an assisted living facility may be needing and can be provided at that facility versus a nursing home. And so, as I understand it, you don't have to be running and sprinting around the facility to be able to sprint around the facility to just be at an assisted living. That as
No.
long as you can assist in the team there that needs to help maybe ambulate you to get up to move to a wheelchair or to walk with a cane or a walker, as long as
Mhm.
you're able to assist them with that and that you have the mental capabilities to be able to kind of recognize your healthcare needs and to be able to provide feedback for those in the facility, then an assisted living facility may be a good fit for you.
Mhm. Yes, I mean, I give, uh, as kind of an example is that one of my communities, here in Huntsville, I had a gentleman that was paralyzed from waist down. He
Uh,
still qualified for assisted living because he could direct his care. He could actually, with his arms, help us when he had the strength to do it. And he used also a trapeze sometimes to help us, but he was
mhm.
able to direct his care and tell us what he needed. And he still met the qualifications for being an assisted living.
Yeah, and I think that's big. And like you said earlier, one other thing that seems really pertinent is that you guys can coordinate other healthcare interventions in the facility. So if mom or dad or grandma or grandpa need some type of occupational therapy or physical therapy or something along those lines, you guys can help coordinate that and make sure that that happens. And that's
And
huge because a lot of people at that stage in life do need those avenues and resources. And the fact that y'all can help coordinate that and make sure that's done, that's big.
oh, absolutely. And we bring those in house. So we have those come in to the community and actually do those physical therapy things here in the community. And also with hospice, we can bring those services in when they're needed. And, even as I guess this is a plug for hospice, but it helps us too, is don't wait until you you are at end of life to do that because they can come in, help with the care, and you can come off of hospice. So, those are things that we do to help and make sure that we have that end of life or to end well at home, even though maybe they go on hospice services because we've had some decline and now we're all working together and now we're back and we can take those pieces away and still have a very high quality of life. So, those are just options to things that help us and help our residents have that quality.
Well, now that I think we've got a better, at least I do, I feel like I've got a better grasp on what types of resources that assisted living facilities provide, and what types of people may qualify for an assisted living facility. Let's take that next logical step and let's kind of talk a little bit about what are some of the things that families that are looking to put mom or dad or family member in a assisted living facility, what are things that they should be considering when they're evaluating assisted living facilities? What would you say as someone who's been doing this 20 plus years? What are things that jump out at you to start with? And maybe what are some things that maybe people aren't thinking about on the front end?
Okay. Even though as our industry, we love to have scheduled tours because we know you're coming in the building and um, I always tell a family to go into a community with an unscheduled tour. Pick where you want to go, pick your top three and walk in because that's when you're going to see, even though you come to my community and with a scheduled tour, that is not going to change what's going on in the community. But you're going to see the true life of the community. And when you walk in the door, walk in with eyes of what mom and dad would like. I know as adult child, including me, my parents had dementia. We have to look through their eyes. Is the community, the size of the community, the location of the community. You want to make sure that it's not going to be overwhelming because even walking into even a small community like mine, it's like going to the first day of school. They feel like everybody's looking at them, even though they're not. But go into that looking. Does mom really want all these amenities that are great for me, but not necessarily for her? Then
Right.
you wanna make sure that of course, we're gonna take them to their appointments and things like that, but location, how far are you away? How far are you away from their physician's office? If they're gonna use our physician, then that might not be a factor to that, but a lot of our residents like to use their doctors that they've had long-term relationships with, and if we're 20, 30 minutes away, then my mom might not be so happy about that.
And Leanne, let me ask you that. I think you may have touched on it, but I want to get a point of clarification. And this may be different from each facility.
Mhm,
Let's say we find a facility we think might be a good fit for our loved one, but maybe it is a 20-minute ride to their
mhm,
primary care physician and they want to keep that primary care physician.
mhm.
Do most facilities have rideshare or transportation that they can help coordinate transporting the person to their doctor's appointments, or is that something that the family would have to coordinate on their own?
No, generally, assisted living communities will offer transport. Most of us, I'm pretty much say all of us have handicap accessible vans or buses, and we can take them to those appointments. So absolutely. The only thing I know is if mom likes to have somebody go with her, and please make sure that the community knows that, or we can always meet that family member at that appointment.
Right.
It just depends on how the family sets that up.
And
Um,
that kind of dovetails back into what you were saying earlier, which is the the person needs to be able to have the cognitive abilities to talk about what's going on medically with them. Because if they're just using the ride, I'm going to issue not ride share as an Uber, but the ride transportation options from the facility, the person that's driving them is not going to necessarily go in there and sit in the medical appointment with, unless that's
No,
been prearranged, right?
exactly. Now, generally, my driver will escort them in to make sure that they're getting where they're going in my assisted living community. But then he leaves, especially if he has more appointments. But
Sure.
now on a memory care side, if they're in a memory care community, then of course, if the family member cannot go to that appointment, then my staff will accompany them to that appointment.
Okay.
That's just, we have to. We cannot send a memory care resident out of the community without that escort, even if it's to an emergency room visit or anything like that. But in a true assisted living, because they can direct their care unless they ask us to have a companion go, then generally the driver will go in and say, "Hey, she's here, check them in," and then they will exit and wait for the call to pick up. So,
Okay.
but when
Just wanted to
I'm
clarify that for our guests and do, yeah.
okay,
Yeah, I was gonna say, I wanted to clarify that because that would be a question if I was if this was something new to me that I'd want to know, am I gonna have to take off from work to carry my
yeah,
mom or dad or whoever? How is that typically coordinated? So that I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I did want to just clarify that for our viewership.
absolutely. And then the questions that, I start asking or if the family's not asking, then we'll kind of volunteer the information, ask about staffing. Yeah. Um, in assisted living, there's not quote a staffing part by the state, but we have to staff to acuity. So that means that if I have more that need extra care, we're actually doing bathing, we're actually doing dressing, we're actually doing all those transfers for those residents, then I'd have to add staff to that to make sure that everyone is safe in the community. So I would ask those questions, how many people are staffed on your first shift, second shift, third shift? Do you have LPNs giving medications or do you have med tech? We have both. I have an LPN on every shift, but that's not a requirement for the state. So that's community based. So each community has the right to staff in an assisted living. Now, on a memory care community side, you have to have an LPN um, dispensing those medications. That's not an option.
Okay.
But those are just questions that I would ask. What's your tenure like? What is your staff tenure like? Do you have high turnover? Unfortunately, COVID caused high turnover for a while, but our industry has started to level itself out. So we don't have high turnover in my community. We have very tenured staff. And those are questions you want to know. Is my mom going to have the same caregiver or is it going to change every day? No, that's not good. Food, food is huge. That's the two things that are focused on the most, well, three medications. Um, what am I going to have for lunch, breakfast, lunch, and dinner? And what activities am I going to go to? Those are the biggest three things that is questioned all the time. And I would ask, "Hey, can I have a lunch tour? I'd like to sit for lunch." Or, "Hey, it's y'all serving lunch. Can I join?"
Yeah.
Because you want to see what they're eating. You want to see, those type of things. And we do meet diet restrictions like a no added salt diet, CCHO, concentrated carbohydrate diet. If we need to cut their meat, do we need to do more finger foods? Those type of things. One of the and I should have gone over it when you asked, we cannot do puree diets or modified diets for swallowing issues.
Okay.
Um, I can do modified diet if mom refuses to put her dentures in and we need a little bit softer foods for that, or we need to cut it up a little bit different. I can do that. But if
Sure.
it's for swallowing issues, assisted living cannot do that.
Okay.
But those are things that that need to be addressed. What type of services does your staff offer? Are we going to do the incontinent care? Are we going to do the hands-on showering? Those type of things. Absolutely. My community does that. That's part of the ADLs. Are you a care level community? Are you going to charge extra as mom starts moving into the needing more care? What are those levels? Or is it an all inclusive community? Um, what are the activities? You know, it's not just bingo. We'll have riots if we don't have bingo, but you can't have bingo every day. So what are we doing? Are we going out to movies? Are we going out to the museums? Are we going out to eat? Are we going to see the movies? Of course we are. We want our residents to still be very, very present in the community. Uh, those are really major questions to
Sure.
ask, because you want to base your community choice on their life. Um, and a lot of times, especially lately, we've been getting, do they play cards, bridge? I have to learn to play bridge. I don't know how, but teach us how to do those things, and they love doing. We get a lot of, well, mom's not going to come out to anything. Well, we do that. We don't give yes or no questions. Hey, we're going to play bingo. Let's go. We'd love to have you in that. Because if you ask a yes or no question, you're going to get no. So we don't do yes or no questions. We hey, let's go. Now, if they just say they're absolutely not going to go, then we accept that and try to do something else. Same as down to a bath. Don't ask yes or no questions. Always, ask those questions. Hey, we're going to get ready. Let's go. Because baths can be scary, especially if they have had a fall.
Sure.
And we want to try to minimize that as much as we can and take that anxiety away from them.
Yeah.
So,
Well, those are some
uh,
great tips and in terms of, hey, everybody seems to be on their better behavior when somebody knows somebody's going to show up. Kind of
exactly.
an unannounced visit is a good idea. And then one of the things that you mentioned, you kind of hit on it then and at the beginning of that kind of question is what are your loved ones' interests? And it's kind of like picking a college. I thought about this as an example. I thought is some people are better suited and want to go to a bigger university. Maybe they want to go to Alabama or Michigan or Texas
Mhm.
with 50 or 60,000 students. But others, like myself, I wanted to go to a small college, and that was a better fit for me. So
Mhm.
kind of think about, this one facility might have more bells and whistles than the other, but is that really a good thing for mom or dad? Because that may be really more of a deterrent or scary for them to be in a bigger facility. Now, it might be a great thing for them if they're more independent and those are the types of things that they enjoy and can still do. Then that might be a tipping factor for them. But that is really a good fact. And then certainly the staffing and those kinds of things. And then I would assume maybe looking at online resources and looking at maybe reviews and some other independent things that may be out there with an understanding that sometimes people who have good things to say may not be as inclined to leave a review as somebody who has bad things to say.
When they
But
get
that's right. And but something that I want to touch on here in the last little bit of we've got left to talk is cost. And that's
Mhm.
something that I think we've all heard, generally speaking, is that boy, it sure is expensive to put your loved one in an assisted living facility, and the
Mhm.
cost can be kind of high. But understanding that with that cost, as you so pertinent put together for us, there's a lot of things that are being provided for your loved one. Not to mention all the meals, all the resources, activities, and the assistance with getting to medical appointments, helping with some of what I'm familiar with the term ADLs, activities of daily living, putting your clothes on, getting dressed, get to the restroom, bathing, all those kinds of things that are a big deal for folks who are needing to stay in an assisted living. Can you
Yes.
give us, and I know it probably varies from one facility in one part of town versus the other, or one state versus another. Can you
Mhm.
give us just some general idea of what costs are And how are those things? Well, let me ask this: what are the general costs? And then you mentioned earlier that there's sometimes extras, and so
Mhm.
the things that we should be looking for to say, well, if you want to do this, it might be this much a month, but then we got to have tack this on to do these other. Just give us some kind of idea about that.
Absolutely. One thing we tell families is to make this decision when you can instead of it being a catastrophic decision, because those catastrophic conditions can cause those prices to go up. So you start generally in the Huntsville area, assisted living is going to start anywhere from about $3,800 and go up to $5,000, $6,000, depending on apartment style. So if you choose a studio deluxe, one bedrooms, two bedrooms, depending on what the community offers. But then you start adding, if you're not an all inclusive community like we are, then you start adding levels of care. Well, mom starts off with just needing hands on or just standby assistance in a shower. Well, as soon as we start needing more hands-on, those costs can go up. So you
Okay.
just depends on the community that they can start with a $500 level of care against that $3,800 cost. So you're adding that to it, all the way up to $3,000-$4,000 of care fees on top of those, the room rate. So that's what we're kind of working with. And then a scalp with a memory care generally starts off around $5,000 a month and goes up from there, depending on care needs. Now, if you're an all-inclusive community, then of course all that is built into
Right.
that. But what we don't want to do is wait till mom falls and breaks a hip and then is absolutely no longer being able to be involved in a choice. It's a need at that point, which of
Right.
course that happens a lot. And unfortunately our seniors will, but we want them to be a part of that decision making. And if it's where we can kind of start and then build on any type of decline or anything to that, that can stop those huge costs up front. But now, if they come in at a higher level of care and then we graduate them off, then most communities will back those care levels back some.
Okay.
It just depends again on the community itself. Now, in the state of Alabama, Medicare does not pay for assisted living. So we're looking at private pay. We're looking at long-term care insurance, aid and attendance for our veterans, our wartime veterans. All of that pays for assisted living.
Okay. Yeah. One of the things, so just to kind of give a synopsis on that, what I took away from that is we need to be asking the specific questions of whether the facility that you're evaluating is all inclusive, regardless of the level of needs that your loved one may have. Then if it's not, then you need to kind of maybe get an idea of, okay, well, mom can do this now, but if this situation changes, how is that going when you provide that additional level of care? What are those costs going to be? Because if
Exactly.
you're thinking I can afford X now, but if they tack on another 20% a year from now, we may not be able to afford that because most people are on a fixed income that are faced with these situations. And so very
Exactly.
important
Mhm.
to make sure that is dialed out. One thing that you and I touched on before we went live that we've seen here at our law firm, and I know you've probably dealt with this as an administrator in these facilities over the years, is that with medic, and that
Mhm.
my understanding, and I'm going to give you the layman's legal understanding from my perspective, is that for Medicaid to pay for an assisted living facility, that the person has to meet requisite asset and income limits, meaning they can't have over certain thresholds of income and due. And there is a 5-year look back. And that's what we've run into here before is when
Yeah.
someone may misappropriate mom or grandpa's assets, or there's just, even if it's innocent and they, should say, well, we can't afford this, but if mom or dad's on Medicaid, we can. And so we'll just transfer the house into somebody's name or do a quick cheap sell. So there's
Mhm.
usually a 5-year look back, right? Where Medicare will look back in the last 5 years and
Mhm.
make sure that any assets or income they have were appropriately spent down
Mhm.
within the guidelines so they won't count against them, right?
Right. Now, I don't know if I don't think we hit it. Now, Medicaid in Alabama will not pay for assisted living.
Okay.
That's when a skilled need is going to be. And when we're start spending down and we're having those discussions with families, um, the we start having those discussions with if you're spending down those costs, then we need to start looking into a skilled environment. Of course, when we're going to guide them to that, but that is absolutely true. You can't just give the car, give the house to a child and say we gave it to him. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Even for aid and attendance, it's the same thing. They're going
Okay.
to look at those 5 years. And if it makes sure, I mean, you can talk more about a trust better than I can, but have those things built into a trust and not just give them to my grandchild because that counts to
Yeah. And I just wanted to kind of just quickly hit on that for people to do. Um, are there any any red flags that people should be looking for? And you kind of may have touched on all this already when we're talking about the tour and some of the things, but is there something that you would say, "Ooh, if you see this or you or they don't have this or they can't respond to this type of line of questioning, then you may want to look elsewhere."
the first thing you want to do is when you walk into a community, you want to feel the warmth. You don't want to come into a cold environment. And then you want to see the residents that are active. You want to see them out. You don't want to see them vegged in front of a TV. That's not what we want for our residents. Or you don't see staff present. You want to see staff walking. You want to see staff as you're walking that tour that they introduce yourself or they say hello. Because if they don't do that to you, then what are they doing it to mom? Um,
Mm.
those
Yeah.
are always huge red flags to me. Smells. Does my community smell good? Because if not, what kind of care are my residents getting? All of those red flags time you walk into a door. Um, if they're not up and active, I want to know why. Those are big, huge flags to me.
Got a
Um,
question here.
mhm.
Let me pull this up for us here. And parent had asked us, for an assisted living facility, is there a certain age that a requirement might be, depending upon whether they should be a resident or not, or admissible, I guess.
By state regulation, no, we do not
Okay.
have any age for that. I've had residents as young as 40s and up to 103-year-old. It just depends on that resident. But no, there is not an age factor to that.
And when people, just something occurred to me too, when in the facilities I've been in, and when you guys were giving me a tour of yours a little while back, and again, there are different room choices and options in each facility and but are the rooms already built out and equipped, or do the people bring their own personal, beds and these kind of things, or can it depend upon the resident? Kind of walk me through generally what someone can expect at the facility.
We encourage them to bring their things to make it more like home. But if it's
Okay.
just something that mom's furniture is in California and we can't get it there, then of course we're going to assist in getting the apartment furnished. We can do it a couple different ways. Generally, if it's just like a 30-day thing to get mom's stuff here, you can use ours or you can buy ours, or we can do it at a rental things. But we do encourage them to bring their things because it makes it more like home. But now they're going to have handicap accessible showers. They're going to have the call button for their around their neck or around their wrist in their bathrooms. Those type of things to make sure it's safe. All of that's already in there. They always ask me about phones. Of course, they can have their phone jack is in there. Most of our residents use their cell phones, and of course, cable TV is already in at my community. But I don't know the community that doesn't already have access to that in their apartment.
Okay. That's just helpful. I think a lot of people might be curious as to how the rooms are finished and what's provided,
Mhm.
what's not, and what the options are. So I think that's helpful for folks.
Sure.
Last thing, I thought that it's something that occurred to me, and I'd shared something with you on a personal level that I had dealt with years ago with my grandmother, and the
Mhm.
way she was not excited about the transition when she moved in to a facility. And what advice do you have for families to make the transition easier for their loved one? You got any insight on that? How that can best can be make that smoother?
Sure. Involve them in the process if it's at all possible. Um, make them feel like they're having a choice in it too. If it becomes that it's that we have to make the move, then bring them to the community. Let them see the community. Let them see, because everybody, including myself when I first started in the industry, had that skilled mindset. Oh, it's the hospital in front of the nurses station. We're so far away from that. But include them if at all possible. If I had to make the decision like I had to for my parents, then have the apartment set up before you move them in so they can see that their things are there, that I'm
Uh-huh.
not taking that away from them, you know, that I'm still making it as much as at home as I can. Um, you know, the biggest thing I tell my staff, and especially if it's a resident, because believe me, I've had them holding on to the door as they come in that I'm not going in, is to make that, to have that staff say hello, hey, welcome home, those type of things, so they do not feel like that they've just been here is into an alien type of environment. I am being welcomed home. And that's the biggest thing that I tell family is if you can involve them, if not, let's make it as much as the home as we can for them.
And that makes good sense. Like you said, trying to, as you said a couple of times throughout our discussion, that trying to be proactive, that if this is something that you kind of start seeing the tea leaves there, let's be proactive and not till it gets to a point that it has to be really a reactive situation where you, like you said, an injury or something else, and you have to do it where they can be a part of it. And then like I agree that I think, feel like you're at home and dude, you see your things, pictures, things that are familiar to you, your bedspread, those kind of things. We all like to get to sleep in our own bed and do, and I don't think that changes for most folks. And I
Exactly.
think that tip is
Exactly.
is a key one. Yeah. Leanne, I want to
Yeah.
thank
Because
you
we all,
for go ahead.
I was just going to say, sometimes we have to look at home is not always the safest place to be. So,
Yeah.
and I mean that in their house. Um, Even though we want to stay there, we can make your home here in assisted living.
Yeah. Well, and like I said, and then and doing the other thing I would say too that you talked about earlier is kind of maybe proximity to family and stuff too. And that it would seem to me one of the other things would be is to make sure that especially at the onset and really throughout, but especially at the onset of the person moving in, making sure that they're seeing familiar faces, and not only that folks there at the facility, which is first and foremost, are being welcoming to them and doing, but making sure that family and friends, people are coming by and seeing them on a regular
Cool.
basis to make sure they're having what they need and they feel more comfortable in that environment as well. Time goes on and they're interacting with their neighbors and everybody else. I'm assuming they're building a community there too, so that makes
Exactly.
it much easier.
This is their home, so they can come and go as they want. Absolutely.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, Leanne, thank you for your time today. Thank you for all you're doing for our elderly community and those in need here in Huntsville, and providing great information today. Because I can tell you, this is something that I think most of us deal with. And like you said, uh, often we face this, and it's kind of a dire situation where someone has had an accident or an injury or something's going on and doing. And if we'd just been a little more thoughtful about it, then we could have made a better decision on the front end. And the other is that if we are more thoughtful about it on the front end, even if we're being proactive using the tips and suggestions you gave us today, that'll help us make a better choice. Because the last thing we want to do is select a facility, they move in, and then you realize shortly into this tenure that they need to leave and be somewhere else.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Well, folks, if you've got questions or comments, put them in the comments and all the platforms. We'll try to get back and reach to them if we can. And then please share this out, because this is again is a topic that a lot of people are facing and will be facing in the coming years. And so put this out there so more people can get this valuable information. Leigh Ann, thank you so much for your time today. I wish
Thank
you well.
you.
Yep. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank
Bye bye.
you. Bye-bye.